I've lived in this apartment for 40 years. The curtains still hold the faint scent of lavender from when Raymond used to steam them himself, insisting they'd last longer that way. The floor creaks in all the familiar places, and the wall near the hallway still carries the faint pencil marks from when Bryce was growing his height, rising year by year. Each line a timestamp I never had the heart to paint over. Every morning, I wake up at 6:30. Not because I have anywhere to be, but because my body has memorized the rhythm of a life spent caring. I boil 1 egg, toast 2 slices of bread, and make a pot of coffee, not the single cup machines everyone uses now, but the old percolator that gurgles like it's telling me stories. I set the table with care, even if it's just for me. Cloth napkin, not paper. Ceramic mug, not the chipped one. There's a dignity in routine. Bryce used to call every Sunday. He'd ask about my roses, about whether I was still going to bingo night with Marcia. But it's been weeks, months, maybe. The last time we spoke, he mentioned a new opportunity, a consulting job overseas. His voice was rushed. Isla was in the background, laughing at something I couldn't hear. I don't blame him. Life pulls people forward. I just hoped he'd circle back more often. Sometimes I stand by the window a bit longer in the evenings, just in case he calls and I need to grab the phone. He hasn't. Not yet. I watered the philodendron today. Raymond called it the stubborn one, the plant that survived every move, every season. It's still here. So am I. The knock on the door came just as I was putting away the dishes. It wasn't the neighbor's polite tap. It was firm, official. I opened the door, expecting Marcia or perhaps a delivery left at the wrong address. Instead, 2 men stood on the mat, buttoned up, clipped voices, carrying folders that already felt heavy in my chest before they spoke. "Mrs. Calloway?" the taller one asked. "Yes." He handed me a thick envelope. "We're here to serve a court-ordered notice of vacate. You have 24 hours to leave the premises." I laughed. It wasn't graceful, it just came out. Sharp and ridiculous. There must be a mistake. I've lived here since 1983. This is my apartment. The second man, younger, looked like he didn't want to be there. He glanced down at the papers, then at me, with something close to pity. "Ma'am, the records show the property was legally sold. Ownership has transferred." I stared at the envelope. The words didn't make sense. I hadn't sold anything. I hadn't even listed it. I hadn't missed any payments. This apartment was mine, was ours. Raymond and I had signed every page of the mortgage together. I still had the files in the cabinet under the microwave. I asked them to wait. I shuffled back to the kitchen, flung open the drawer, and pulled out the folder. Faded manila, thick with time. I flipped through the paperwork with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. My name wasn't where it should have been. My name wasn't anywhere. The taller man cleared his throat. "We'll return tomorrow morning to confirm the unit has been vacated." I didn't walk them out. I just stood there, fingers gripping papers that meant nothing now. The door clicked shut behind them. I dropped into the kitchen chair, still holding the folder like it could explain something, as if it might defend me. But it didn't. Not when I picked up the phone and dialed Bryce. Not when it went to voicemail. Not even after the 3rd time. The moment the door closed behind them, I grabbed the phone with both hands like it was a lifeline. Bryce's number was still pinned to the top of my contacts. The little picture of him smiling, tan from a trip to San Diego, looked back at me like nothing was wrong. I pressed call. It rang. Once. Twice. 4 times. Voicemail. I hung up and tried again. Maybe the signal dropped. Maybe he was driving. Maybe it was a time zone issue, though I wasn't even sure where he was anymore. Still no answer. On the 3rd try, I left a message. I tried to keep my voice even. Tried to sound like a mother with a simple question. "Bryce, it's Mom. I just got some visitors at the door. Something about the apartment being sold. I think there's been a mistake. Can you call me back right away? I didn't say the word evicted. It caught in my throat like a betrayal I wasn't ready to say aloud. I set the phone down, stared at it, then picked it up again. This time, I texted, "Emergency. Please call me now." The quiet in the apartment thickened. I walked to the bedroom, to the place where I kept the copy of Raymond's will in a leather envelope. My fingers fumbled with the zipper. I read through the pages, looking for a name mine, and there it was. Bryce Calloway, beneficiary of the property, with stipulation of lifetime occupancy granted to spouse, Lorraine Calloway. I had the right to be here. It was written in ink. And yet, 2 strangers stood in my kitchen and told me to be gone in 24 hours. I called again. Voicemail. The air felt thinner by the minute. My chest was tight, but my thoughts were sharper than they'd been in years. Something wasn't adding up. Bryce had to know. He had to. I lifted the phone once more and dialed. Just as the doorbell rang a second time, it was Marcia at the door holding a pie she'd clearly baked hours ago. Her apron still dusted with flour. But one look at my face and she pushed right past the threshold. Pie forgotten. Concern sharp in her voice. What happened? I didn't answer right away. I handed her the envelope. She scanned the notice, her lips tightening. Then her eyes widened as she flipped through the second page. Lorraine. This is a final sale record, dated 2 weeks ago. Buyer already wired the money. It's done. I felt myself lowering into the couch like the weight of the paperwork was sinking me straight through the floor. I shook my head, but I didn't sell anything. I never signed a thing. Marcia's voice softened. It lists Bryce as the seller. Lorraine. Were you on the deed? I thought so. We bought this place together. Raymond and I, years ago. She paused. Do you know if the title was ever updated? After he passed, I didn't answer. I already knew. Somewhere between grief and trust. I had filed it all away. Raymond handled the legal details. And then, after he died, Bryce stepped in. He took over the paperwork. The taxes. Said it was all taken care of. I pulled out the old folder from the side table drawer. Pages of our past spilled out utility bills, warranties, birthday cards from decades ago. Finally, I found it. The original deed. 2 names, Raymond Calloway and Bryce Calloway. No mention of me. I must have signed something back then, some transfer of title, some trust paper. I'd let them guide the pen. Never asked questions. Marcia didn't say I told you so. She just sat beside me. Silent. Steady. Maybe he didn't mean to do it like this. I whispered. Almost to myself. Maybe there's a way to reverse it. Marcia placed the documents gently on the coffee table. It's legal. Lorraine, the sale went through. The buyer has the keys. It's done. I reached for my phone again, willing it to ring. Nothing. Outside. The sky was shifting colors, and my home, my whole life was slipping into someone else's hands. And still, he hadn't called me back. It was after midnight when the phone finally lit up. I'd been lying on the couch, fully dressed. The documents still scattered across the coffee table like pieces of a broken frame. The screen showed his name, Bryce. My hand shook as I answered, Bryce. A pause. Then his voice, calm, too calm. Hi, Mom. My throat tightened. I've been calling all day. Did you get my messages? Yeah, I saw them. Sorry. Things have been busy. I had court officials at my door this morning. They said the apartment's been sold. Another pause. Then right. I meant to talk to you about that. My breath caught. You sold it technically. Yes. It's already closed. Isla and I are leaving next week. Portugal. It all happened fast. He said it like he was reading me an itinerary. Like he was updating a work calendar. You sold my home. It wasn't personal. Mom, it's just this opportunity came up. And the apartment was still in my name. I thought you'd be okay. You've talked about downsizing before. I talked about giving away old coats. Not my home. I didn't think you'd be so upset. He added, you'll get something else. Maybe even better. I can send you a list of rentals. It hit me then, not just what he had done, but how easily he said it, like I was a minor detail in a much larger plan, like I was a line item he'd moved around to make room for something shinier. I couldn't keep the tears back. I have 24 hours. You didn't even tell me. There was silence on his end. Then, with clipped practicality, he said, you'll be okay. Marcia can help. She's always been great in a crisis. I laughed, bitter, exhausted. This wasn't a crisis. Bryce, it was a choice. Mom, we're not doing this right now. I'll call again once we're settled. The line went quiet before I realized he'd ended the call. I sat there, holding the phone to my ear like he might come back. But he didn't. Just me, the walls, and the hum of something breaking deep inside. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, then stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled open the drawer where I kept the will. It was time for him to remember exactly what his father wrote. By morning, I had reread the will twice and underlined the clause that had become my only defense. The property may not be sold or transferred without the written consent of Lorraine Calloway, who retains full right of occupancy until death or voluntary vacate. Raymond had insisted on that wording. I remember how particular he'd been about it. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now, it was all I had. I called Bryce again just after 8. This time, he answered. Mom? He sighed, like I was a delay in his itinerary. I won't keep you long, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just wanted to ask, did you read the will completely? There was a pause. I read enough to know the place came to me. But did you read all of it? Clause 17? Paragraph 3? He didn't respond. I waited. I'm not sure, he finally muttered. Why? Because... Bryce, I said, unfolding the paper in front of me. You can't sell the apartment without my written consent, and I never gave it. That can't be right. It is. Your father made sure of it. He left you the deed. Yes, but he gave me the right to live here until I chose to leave. He was silent again. You didn't check. Did you? I said. Not with anger, but something colder. Something closer to truth. I thought it was clean. The lawyer said the title was in my name, and lawyers don't read family intentions. Bryce, they read paperwork. His voice dropped. So what does that mean? It means the sale is invalid, and the buyer will find that out soon. I've already made some calls. You're serious. I'm 68 years old. You gave away my address without a conversation. Yes. Bryce. I'm serious. He exhaled sharply, like a man feeling the first edge of something slipping away. I have to go, he said. Isla's packing things. I'll call you when I can. Read the will. I said before the line went dead. This time, all of it. I folded the paper and slipped it back into the envelope, then set it gently on the kitchen table. It sat there, between the salt and the sugar bowl, like a quiet declaration of war. And somewhere across the ocean, my son was finally realizing he had made a very expensive mistake. 3 days passed before I heard anything. Then, out of the blue, I received a single-line email from Bryce. I need to talk. He didn't call, didn't explain, just vanished again. But I could picture it. I could see him pacing in some polished bank lobby in Lisbon, sweat gathering at his collar while the clerk typed into her screen and frowned. I imagined the moment the numbers came back, balance 0. He'd wired the funds from the apartment sale into a joint account with Isla, His idea of starting a future, her idea, it turned out, had been quite different. She was gone. I imagined him calling her. No answer. Messaging her. No reply. I imagined the creeping panic when he checked their photo archive and saw it wiped. Their shared playlists deleted. His name removed from their travel bookings. Blocked on everything. By the time he realized it wasn't a misunderstanding, it was already too late. She had taken everything, every cent, every login, every illusion, and the apartment. He couldn't reverse that either. Because I had already filed a legal objection with the new title holder. My occupancy clause had put everything on hold. When he finally called, his voice had changed. It was lower now, stripped of its easy confidence. "She's gone. Mom," he said quietly. "I know. She drained the account. All of it. Every cent. She planned it." I said, "From the beginning." A beat passed. "I think you're right." Another pause. Then he added, almost to himself, "I thought we were building something." I let that sit between us. "You were," I said gently. "But not with her. He didn't ask for money. Not yet. Maybe he still had some pride left. Maybe he knew I wouldn't offer." We hung up without resolution. Just silence on both ends. But in that silence, I could feel the weight shifting. And for the first time since the knock at the door, I breathed in without feeling like something was closing around me. By the next morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The day I left the apartment, I didn't cry. I packed only what mattered. A few photographs, my favorite coffee mug, the quilt Raymond's mother made the year we got married. The rest I left behind, things tied more to habit than memory. Marcia showed up with a rented van and 2 thermoses of coffee. She didn't ask questions. She just wrapped dishes in newspaper and handed me rolls of tape like we were moving into something, not out of it. What Bryce never knew, what even Raymond once called our quiet insurance, was the account he opened the year after we paid off the mortgage. He'd deposited a few thousand into it every year, just in case. He'd say, "In case something ever goes sideways." I never touched it. Not when the roof leaked. Not when Bryce needed help with tuition. Not even after Raymond died, but after the knock on my door and the silence from my son. I knew exactly why Raymond left it there. The condo downtown wasn't flashy, but it had wide windows that filled the space with light, and a balcony that caught the evening sun just right. I paid in cash. No mortgage, no cosigners, no strings. Marcia helped me hang new curtains, bright yellow ones that didn't match a single thing I owned, but made the whole place feel like possibility. I painted one wall myself. My back ached for 2 days after. But I did it, on my own, some nights. I still woke up expecting the creak of the floorboards in the old place. But in this new space, the silence didn't ache. It expanded. I wasn't rescued. I wasn't ruined. I had simply remembered who I was. When the envelope from Bryce arrived a week later, forwarded from the old address, I opened it with steady hands. Inside was a photo and a note. "Coming home. I hope you'll see me." I read it twice, then folded it back up. I had some thinking to do. He knocked just after 7. I had just sat down with a cup of tea and a book I wasn't really reading. I knew it was him before I even opened the door. Bryce stood there in yesterday's clothes. He looked smaller than I remembered, face drawn, eyes unsure. He held his suitcase like he wasn't sure whether to ask in or walk away. I opened the screen and stepped out to meet him. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. I nodded. "You're back." He exhaled, like he'd been holding it for 2 months. I didn't know where else to go. I believed that. He stared down at his shoes, then held out an envelope. "This has everything. Bank records, police report. I've started trying to reverse some of the transfers. I know it's too late. I didn't reach for it." "What are you hoping I'll say I don't know?" he said. "That you'll talk to me, that you'll believe I wasn't trying to hurt you, that maybe you'll let me fix it. I looked at him. Really looked. The lines around his mouth. The slump in his shoulders. The weight of choices catching up. You forgot one detail, I said quietly. He looked up. What this was, never just an apartment. He nodded slowly, as if finally understanding that what he took wasn't square footage. It was safety. Memory. Trust. I know, he whispered. I'm not angry. I said, but I'm not the same woman who waited by the phone. Either. His eyes welled. I wouldn't blame you if you never spoke to me again. I will, I said, and surprised us both. But I won't be the one to come find you. Not anymore. He didn't ask to come in, and I didn't invite him. I watched as he turned and walked down the hall, slower than he used to. I stood in the doorway long after he was gone, until the wind picked up and reminded me I had left the kettle on. 3 days passed before he came again. No suitcase this time, just an uncertain knock and hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. I let him in. We sat across from each other in my new kitchen. The light was soft, the air steeped in Earl Grey. I slid an envelope across the table. He didn't reach for it right away. There's an address inside, I said. A small rental off Elm Street. I paid the first month. It's clean. Safe. Walking distance from the bus line. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I didn't fill the silence. There's also a key, I added. Just one. You'll need to make your own copies. He finally looked at me. Why are you doing this? I took a breath. Because you're still my son. And because you need to know what it feels like to build something yourself. Not borrow it, not steal it. Build it. I have nothing left. You have time. That's more than some people get. He stared at the envelope for a long time. I don't deserve this. No, I said, you don't. He flinched, but I didn't soften it. This isn't forgiveness. It's a start. What you do with it, that's yours to carry. He nodded, slowly. The kind of nod people give when they've finally stopped looking for shortcuts. When he stood to leave, he looked around the apartment. It's beautiful. It's mine. I said, every bit of it, at the door. He paused. Will I see you again? I met his eyes. That depends on who you become next. He nodded once more and left with the envelope tucked under his arm like something fragile. I watched him through the window, his shoulders hunched, the weight of the key heavier than the suitcase he carried before, and as the door clicked shut behind him, I turned back to the stove and poured the last of the tea. I sat down at the table I had bought myself. In a home I owned alone, the quiet didn't ache anymore. It made room.